It had come suddenly and seemingly from out of nowhere. Its origins were shrouded in mystery.
An informational video from the National Library of Medicine about a disease that we now know as AIDS. Welcome to Inside the Issues. I'm Alex Cohen. Before we started calling it AIDS or acquired immune deficiency syndrome, this terrifying condition was known as GRID or gay cancer. Eventually, the medical community recognized that men who have sex with men were not the only ones getting sick, and they decided it would be more appropriate to use the term AIDS. But even for the few months that that term, GRID, was in use, it had profound implications for the way this country would view and respond to this disease. Implications which have not been lost on health leaders today, many of whom have called for a name other than monkeypox to describe yet another highly contagious virus. Stigma and discrimination are never okay. Solidarity, not stigma. That is the message this week from the World Health Organization. Joining me now in studio with more on that, where we are at with Mpox, is Dr. Tony Mills, CEO of the Men's Health Foundation. It is so good to have you here with us.
Thank you, Alex. Nice to be here.
It is so nice to have you here, all your history, your perspective. We will talk about Mpox for a moment, but I do want to talk about the power of a name and that notion of GRID, that it was the G standing for gay, that this was a gay man's disease. What was the impact of that back in the day?
I think it really impeded our progress in fighting the disease because people said, oh, I'm not at risk. I'm not in that category. It's them. It's their disease. And so I think it really impeded our making advancements there. It really fed into the stigma. It fed into the prejudice. I have a photograph from San Francisco General in 1985 where the nurses would put the food trays down outside the patient's door. They wouldn't even go into the room. So, I mean, it was just such a highly stigmatized time. It was terrible.
Yeah, and what my memories are from that time, too, is that there were some who believed homosexuality is a sin, and therefore this disease, there was almost like a religious component. This was the curse for breaking the quote-unquote word of God. So let's fast forward to now, and now there is this new virus, which has been around for quite some time, called monkeypox. You and I were talking just before the show began, and you said, yeah, I'm still calling it monkeypox.
Yeah.
Why is that?
I think the horse is out of the gate. Yeah. They should have changed this when the disease first broke out. We should have made a change. It was discussed, and then it never changed. So I think now everybody really thinks about it as monkeypox, and again, such a highly stigmatized word. People are so offended by it, and so I think it's unfortunate, but we're stuck with it unless they give it the disease a name, which they could do. Then we could actually have something else, like with HIV and AIDS, and we could refer to it.
And just to be clear, you mean the disease that develops once one contracts
Yes.
the monkey? That's a really interesting idea. Okay, let's talk about the virus and cases of it itself. Here in Los Angeles County, there was initially a pretty significant uptick that happened in July and then in August, as our viewers can see. And then very recently, there's been kind of this drop-off. What do you think is behind this decline?
I wish I knew. I mean, it's such a topic of discussion amongst all people who are involved in this right now. We think about three things. There could be a change in behavior, that maybe the fear about this is changing people engaging in risk factors. I'd like to believe that, but we run a very large STD clinic, and I can tell you that the cases of STDs have not gone down, and so I don't really think behaviors have really changed. We're highly engaged in the vaccine effort, so maybe we vaccinated enough people that we've turned the curb. I'd love to believe that, but the numbers aren't that high. So I don't think that's really it either. I believe, and I think what a lot of people think, is it's just the course of the disease. We're learning every day about monkeypox, and so we're just observing what's the course of the disease, and they have their courses, and I think this is a part of that.
Yeah. There could be a new chapter, a new course in our very near future, because schools are back in session, including college campuses, and a number of local campuses have, entire monkeypox warning sites, on their web pages. And as I've heard, and I'm curious if you've been hearing this as well, some are saying this could be a particular area of concern because college students, they're young, they might still be exploring their sexuality, and the idea of getting a vaccine, because of that stigma that we talked about, they might not get the vaccine and therefore be more vulnerable. And you've got, young adults living in dorms together. What do you think? Is this something that you're concerned about?
I think the one thing they really know is college students like to have fun. And,
yes, they do, of all sorts.
When monkeypox first came out, I was critical of some of the health authorities because it seemed that they portrayed it as a sexually transmitted infection that was in the gay community. And as a gay man, I took really great offense to that. And I think what that did was that made people think, oh, I'm not at risk, when they're actually engaging in behaviors that are at risk. I mean, a virus doesn't know a sexuality or a gender. So, if I'm a virus and I'm trying to get transmitted to another host, put two naked bodies that have some sweat rubbing up and down against each other. And so that could be having sex, but it could be at a dance party. It could be rolling around at the beach. It could be working out at the gym. I mean, there's so many different things that could cause that situation where the virus gets transmitted. Yeah. There's no reason this virus is contained to the gay community. It's just a matter of time.
No. But there certainly have been cases of transmission within the community of men having sex with men. And there was a really interesting story not long ago in the LA Times that highlighted how much the very recent experience of having COVID has kind of informed some of the behavior changes that we're seeing now. And the one that really caught my eye was this idea of sex pods. Basically, people creating, much as families did with their kids, saying, okay, we want to really limit the number of people we see, so let's have these school pods of maybe 2 to 3 families. People are doing that with sexual partners. What are your thoughts on that strategy? Are you hearing of folks doing that?
I am. Men in the gay community have been doing this for a decade. It was an attempt to avoid HIV, but a sex pod is only as strong as its weakest link.
That's what they said about COVID too. Literally that same thing, because it's true. Yeah.
And there are several weak links in most any sex pod, I'll tell you. Yeah. And so if someone strays outside of the pod and they bring the infection into the pod, then everybody becomes positive. We saw this in New York. They had pods where people were trying to avoid HIV, and somebody went out and brought in hepatitis C, and then the whole pod becomes infected with hepatitis C. That's how we learned hepatitis C was sexually transmitted, was from the pods in New York. So I think that people are trying to do that. I don't think it's a very valid mechanism. I think that, again, it's as strong as its weakest link, and there's a lot of weak links.
Yeah, I'm curious what you see as the long-term impact of these current behavioral changes, too, because I could see it going kind of both ways. Silver lining possibility, okay, COVID, monkeypox, mpox, whatever you call it, people are really kind of being very careful about who they do what with, and maybe that stays with them long-term. Or if people really kind of go the more celibate route for a while because they try to avoid this, will there be kind of a 1960s free love movement that happens once the worst of mpox passes?
Right. But aren't we there already? I mean,
I don't know.
Look at how people connect sexually today. It's so different from the previous generation. So it's one thing to talk about being celibate, but actually most people get their sexual pleasures from relatively anonymous sex. And so I think that those behaviors are so ingrained right now. I don't know if those are really going to change. I think what I'm hoping is that people do start thinking about how can I take better care of myself, and whether that's I'm dealing with a behavioral health issue, I've got burnout, behavioral things that need to be addressed. Maybe it's the behaviors you're engaging in sexually that are putting you at high risk. How can you address that? I think if we can come out of this on the other side with people taking better care of themselves and helping their friends to take better care of themselves, then we've won.
It's why we say stay safe and be well at the end of every episode of this show, which is my wish to you as well. Dr. Tony Mills, thank you so much for dropping by.
Thank you so much, Alex.